Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. In today's video, we're going to be doing my predictions for what I think is going to happen this year in Smash Ultimate. We're going to be talking about how I think the meta will shift, what players will rise to dominance, and how certain regions will perform. So let's get the most important question out of the way right away. Who do I think is going to be the best player in the world for 2024? And as it stands right now, there are 4 people that are in contention for that spot. It's going to be Akola, Sonics, Mia, and Spargo. And obviously going later into the year, a couple more people could be added to that list, but those guys seem to be ahead of the curve right now. And between those 4, I think Sonics and Mia are the most likely to pull ahead. And I should get this out of the way right now. Mia and Akola are going to have an advantage over Sonics and Spargo because they're from Japan. Japan has more major events. They have more top players, so you're just going to get more opportunities to get these big wins. And Mia and Akola are definitely going to capitalize on them. And before people get all fussy about that, it was like that in America pre-quarantine. The shoe's just on the other foot now. Just deal with it. So now that brings up the conversation. Do Sonics and Spargo have to travel to Japan in order to become the best in the world? And the short answer to that is no, I don't think so, but it would definitely help because you not only get the practice from Japan, but you also get to play Mia and Akola, and the 2 best players in the world versus Mia and Akola are Sonics and Spargo. They have amazing records in those head-to-heads. The problem is they just don't get too many opportunities to prove themselves in those head-to-heads, and when Akola and Mia are traveling to America, they have to make the most of it, and a majority of the time, they do. But a majority of the time isn't enough. SmashCon is going to be our big example from this year. Both Spargo and Sonics bomb out of that event, whereas Akola and Mia both get top 3. And that's ultimately going to be the reason why Akola and Mia are probably going to be the top 2 players in the world for 2023. Spargo and Sonics cannot afford to make blunders at any of these big events, much more so the events that Japanese players are in attendance, and it's obviously going to be the same thing for Akola and Mia. It's not like they can get a couple 16th and just shake it off. They have to have pretty much perfect seasons as well, but one slip up for them isn't going to be as bad because they're going to get twice as many opportunities because they just have more majors. Alright, enough of that little side tangent, back to the topic at hand. The reason that I think Sonics and Mia are going to pull ahead of Spargo and Akola is because of the mastery that they have over their broken character. Sonics is easily the best Sonic in the world in pretty much every single aspect of the character, but especially in the aggression and the edge guarding. He is able to capitalize on so many early stocks because of the bravado that he has when he is going off stage, when he is taking these up-close interactions. He's winning a majority of the time, and he's getting the maximum amount of conversions a majority of the time, and it's the exact same situation for Mia. I've never seen a player make so many correct decisions as I have seen with Mia, and it's the reason that his advantage state and ledge trapping is the best in the game. It is impossible to get off the ledge versus this guy because 1, Game & Watch is absolutely broken, but 2, Mia knows that Game & Watch is absolutely broken, and he's perfectly exploiting his character in every single aspect of the advantage state. Now, let's not get it twisted. Spargo and Akola can definitely still be the best players in the world for 2024, but I think in order to do so, they're going to need to lean on their secondaries. For Spargo, it's going to be the Corrin, specifically for Sonics, and Corrin's also just an amazing character to have in the pocket. She does so well in the current meta, and we'll get to her in a little bit, trust me on that, but the Spargo versus Sonics head-to-head is one that we saw a lot in 2023, and a majority of them did go into Spargo's favor, but in the latter half of the year, you started to see it turning towards Sonics, and that's because his offstage conversions versus both the Cloud and the Aegis are incredible. It's really difficult for Spargo to make it back to the stage, and it's still going to be a struggle with Corrin, but nowhere near as bad as Aegis or Cloud. And I also think Corrin just does really well versus Sonic, probably better than Aegis versus Sonic specifically because, again, he's just so incredible in the edge guarding, and I'm sure Sonic will be flowcharting the Corrin edge guarding the second that he loses that matchup, but if Spargo has those 3 characters to choose from, it's going to be really difficult for Sonic to actually lock him down and be able to beat him in a set. So if Spargo invests into the Corrin, I think he can definitely take that #1 spot. And also, I'm not too worried about him versus either Akola or Mia as of right now. And for Akola, his secondary is going to be the Aegis. And I should mention, Akola's Steve has been leveling up massively lately. He's been introducing the no-impact land combos, which is the next level of Steve. We're going to be seeing a lot of that in 2024. Be ready for it. And I think that can really help his play. But I think the Aegis can help us play more, specifically versus Sonics and Spargo. Not only are those difficult matchups for Steve, but it seems like Akola has a bit of a mental barrier, more so versus Spargo than he does versus Sonics, but the Aegis is a great pick for both of those matchups. I know I said Sonics is really good at edgeguarding Aegis, and he is, but in every other aspect of the matchup, it is an even matchup, and versus Spargo, at least it's not Steve. That's really all we can hope for, and the Aegis isn't a terrible pick into Mia either. It's a pretty good matchup for the character, and I just think the Aegis provides so much value versus Akola in the matchups that he's struggling with, because everyone else in the world, he's probably just going to beat with the Steve, especially with the way that he's been leveling it up. But when it comes to winning these super major events against these other contenders, I think the Aegis is going to need to come in clutch. But if you're forcing me to pick between Sonics and Mia, I would ultimately have to go with Mia. He's going to be in Japan. He just has a massive benefit there. And also, this player is just incredible. I have to circle back to that point of making the correct decision. It really feels like Mia is the best in the world at doing that. And Game & Watch is probably the best character at supporting that playstyle of just doing the optimal thing over and over and over again. And there's a possibility that Sonics and Spargo go on a tour in Japan and absolutely tear it up. But there's also a possibility that Mia and Akola come to NA and just farm everyone else again. We're really just going to have to wait and see. But as it stands right now, my money's on Mia. But enough of that boring number one talk. Let's move on to some other players, starting off with Zomba. I think he's probably going to be a top 5 player in the world by the end of the year. And I don't know who's going to kick out of the top 5 because I doubt it's any of the top 4 and I doubt it's Glutine. That guy's really good, but it's going to be one of them because Zomba is incredible. He is so fundamentally solid on Rob of all characters. Like, Fundy's Rob doesn't seem like a real thing, but Zomba is Fundy's Rob, and he's starting to get the conversions on point. Rob is going to be touch of deathing people off of his Nair a lot in 2024, and we're starting to see that from a bunch of Rob players, and we're also starting to see that from Zomba. And when you mix amazing fundamentals with touch of death off a move like Nair, you get a very scary opponent. Our next player is going to be Doramigi, and he's going to be top 20 by the end of the year. I also think he's going to universally surpass Proto Bonham as the best Min player in the world if he hasn't already. Obviously, Bonham's Min is incredible, but it was mainly incredibly because fundamentally he was just such a solid player. He wasn't doing any crazy Min stuff. Doramigi, he's doing the Min stuff. His edge guarding is by far the best to ever touch this character, and most Min have very good edge guarding. That's kind of the gimmick of the character. You get to ram from on stage, completely safe, go for a 2-frame, try to clip the jump. But Doramigi, he's going off stage. He is going after you, and instead of covering half of the position off stage with Ram, he is covering all of it with Ram. And he's also using his incredibly quick Ram Nair, which converts into Dragon Arm to steal stocks so early. And Doramigi is a very new player to the competitive scene, at least at the top level, and he already has phenomenal results. He's already on an upward trend, and that trend is going to continue. He's just so courageous in the offstage aspect. I really have to hammer that point home. Go watch a Doramigi set. That guy is crazy offstage. This next one's going to be pretty quick. DD, Shining Mark, and Hurt. It's the exact same thing I said on my who is going to win their first major in 2024 video. If these players are consistently going to events, they're probably all going to be top 20 in the world. If they're not, it's going to be a lot more difficult. Our next player is going to be Shattuck, and he's going to finish somewhere in the top 15, and I'll get to Korn eventually, but she's very good in the current meta. That's all I'll say for now, and Shattuck is one of the reasons that I think that. I gotta give a shout out to Neo as well, and the reason that I have Shattuck on this list instead of Neo is just because Shattuck has been a little bit more consistent as of late, and consistency is definitely something that you need if you're going to be shooting for a top 15 spot, especially in the current state of Ultimate. But I think both Neo and Shattuck have similar peaks. They're both extremely young players that are on an upward trend. Part of that's because of the meta, but part of that's also because they've just been going to a bunch of events. They've been grinding. They've been getting significantly better, and I think 2024 is going to be the year where all of this hard work pays off. Our next player is WebJP, and he's going to finish somewhere in the top 25. Y'all got to remember that WebJP was not always a Sheik player. He started this game playing Zero Suit and Lucas. The Sheik is more of a recent thing. And by recent, I mean like at least a year at this point, but relatively to the game's lifespan, that's still pretty recent. And on a character like Sheik, she's going to take a lot of work and a lot of time to master. But WebJP is already so good with her. He's beaten Light twice. He's taken a Cola and Glutine to game 5. He's going toe-to-toe with some of the best players in the world on his new, very difficult character, and he's only going to get better. He's only going to get more experience. I think 2024 is going to be a very good year for this guy. My next player is going to be Beast Mode Paul, and he is a marvel to me. His consistency with Hero it's so interesting because you think Hero should be the most inconsistent character in the game. Super high highs, but super low lows. It's really just RNG. but that's not the case for Beast Mode Paul. He does have a secondary Sephiroth, but here's doing a majority of the lifting, and his last 3 majors, he's gotten 17th at all of them. Luminosity makes moves Miami, Port Priority A, and Luminosity makes big moves 17th place. He's got wins on Gluttony, Siski, Andres FN, Big D, Cola, Shining Mark. He is just such a phenomenal player, definitely the best hero in the world, and Akka is still very good. I still think Akka is a little bit better at using the buffs than Beast Mode Paul, but Beast Mode Paul's usage of the specials is incredible. His normal usage as well is very good. I think that's a little bit of the Sephiroth coming out from him, and I think if Beast Mode Paul could get into a top 8 at a major this year, it's just going to steamroll from there. He's going to end somewhere in the top 30 by the end of the season. And our final player is going to be Alan Dis, and I don't have an exact spot for Alan Dis because if he doesn't travel outside of Mexico, his placements are probably not going to get that much higher. Unfortunately, if you're inside Mexico and just Mexico, it's really difficult to get ranked in the top 100. But if Alan Dis has the opportunity to travel outside a region, play against some new players, he is going to benefit from that experience massively, and I also think he's going to do pretty well at some of those events. So if Alan Dis has the opportunity to get outside of Mexico, I could see him easily being a top 50 player in the world. Editing proof block, Alan Dis is actually not the last player that I want to give a shout out to because I gotta mention Tweak and MK Leo. The way they played at Luminosity Makes Big Moves has given me a lot of copium, and if they play like that at their other events this year, they're going to be reclaiming their dominance that they once had. We're going to be moving on to characters now. I'm not going to be talking about players that I think are going to fall off because that's just not very nice. So our first character is going to be that Corrin that I keep alluding to. I think she's the best secondary character you can have in the game right now. She just does so well into the current meta. You look at the characters that she does well against. She beats Steve. She beats Rob. I personally think she beats Game & Watch, but that matchup is at worst even. She goes even with Sonic, Aegis, Bayonetta. She just does so well versus so many of the relevant characters. The only slight disadvantages she has are going to be against Samus and Seg, and there's a couple other bad matchups, but those are going to be the big ones that you have to worry about, but that's why she's going to be a great secondary. Y'all know at the start of the game how everyone had a Lucina. I think everyone's going to have a Corrin by the end of 2024. She's not the most difficult character, maybe a little bit harder than your typical sortie because you do have to be a little bit creative with those combo routes, but y'all have heard of Cloud back air? Have you heard of Corrin up air? That move is the stupidest thing I have ever seen. It is literally better than half of the cast, and I think Corrin is going to run rampant this year. Our next character is going to be Pac-Man, and I don't really know why this character fell off in 2023, but I think in 2024 he's going to make a bit of a resurgence. Don't believe what Big Duck Hunt fan tells you. This character is broken. Amazing boxing, really solid projectiles, some of the best edge guarding in the entire game, and he's got a super solid matchup spread. The only relevant characters that he's going to be losing to are Rob and Wolf. He's beating characters like Corrin, Bayonetta, Kazuya, Samus, Min. He's going even with Steve, Snake, Sonic, and there's also a lot of very good Pac-Man players that I think could have a super solid year. Obviously, T is going to be the front runner there, and he didn't have an amazing 2023, and that's probably the main reason why we saw Pac-Man falling off a little bit, but he could definitely bounce back in 2024. JDV and Sinji are very good. Sinji's having an amazing start to the year at LMBM. Both Quid and DD have some really solid Pac-Man secondaries as well. There's a bunch of Pac-Man players that are super good that can pop off this year, and I think they're going to. The next character that I think is going to improve is Bayonetta, but I don't think she's going to improve in the sense that Pac-Man and Corrin are, because I think there's not going to be too many Bayonetta players that start popping off this year. She's a very difficult character that you need to invest a lot of time into, but I think the already established Bayonetta players are going to just keep getting better and better results. I could easily see Tomapi, Bloom Forever, and Lima all finishing in the top 30, and that's just to name the top 3. Death Spade's very good, Frog is very good, Geist is very good. There are so many incredible Bayonetta players that I think could just farm in 2024. I've given you 3 characters I think are going to improve. Now come my 3 characters that I think are going to fall off, and they all have the same weakness, so I'm doing them together. Cloud, Aegis, and Min. I'll give you 3 seconds to figure out what that weakness is. In case you haven't figured it out, it's the recovery. These characters on stage, super oppressive, amazing, neutral, really solid advantage state, but then I hit you off stage at 20 and your life is in danger, and I clip your jump at 40 and you're just dead. I will say Cloud's recovery is definitely better than Aegis and Min's because the hitbox on it is actually super good, and sometimes you're going to have limit, but all it really takes is a lingering hitbox beating Cloud to his up B, and the character is just going to die. There are 2 people in the entire world that have figured out how to edge guard Cloud. One of them is Sonic's. Fair enough, he's playing Sonic, best edge guarding character in the game. The other one is Light. If Light with Fox can edgeguard Cloud, you can edgeguard Cloud. And you can edgeguard Aegis, you can edgeguard Min. These characters all have a massive flaw that is super exploitable at all states in the game. And for some reason, people just aren't practicing the flowcharts. I think it's going to change. And the final character that I want to talk about is Steve, and he's in a weird spot. I don't think he's going to get significantly better. I don't think he's going to get significantly worse. I just think he's going to change. And what I mean by that is I think we'll see more Steve players in the top 128, but less Steve players in the top 8. And the reason for that is people are getting good with the Steve combos. They're landing the no impact lands. They're getting the 0 deaths. That's going to get you into the top 128. That's going to get you in the top 64. But when it gets to the top 16, the top 8, it's going to be a lot harder to pull that stuff off because all of those players are very good at the Steve matchup. You have to be at this point in Smash Ultimate. If you are seriously competing in this game and you don't know the Steve matchup, at least you have something to work on. I think it's going to be a lot harder for these breakout runs to happen with Steve, but the established players like Akola, Onin, Didi, and a couple other ones I'm sure will still be getting into these top 8s, but you're not going to be seeing as many new Steve players having these crazy runs. Editing proof block here, I forgot to mention Me Brawler. This is maybe the year that people figure out he's broken. Maybe. Now it's time to talk about the 4 regions of Smash Ultimate, starting off with Mexico, and I'm not gonna lie to y'all, this region is definitely my biggest blind spot in Smash Ultimate. I'm not super familiar with them, and unfortunately, they just don't have a ton of massive events where they can really showcase some of their incredible players, but every single year in Smash Ultimate, it seems like we get a new Mexican player that's just destroying everyone. Obviously, at the start of the game, you had MKLeo, then you had Meister the next year, then you get back into Quarantine, you had Chag, and then you had Spargo, and now in 2023, you have SkyJ. Who's it going to be for 2024? Maybe it's Rox, maybe it's Alendis, maybe it's Cloudy. I honestly don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised if another Mexican player just started farming everyone this year. My next region is going to be Europe, and I think they're going to continue on the trend they did in 2023, where they're just getting significantly better, and they did that in 2023 with only 3 major events, only really 1 major event where you had a bunch of people traveling down, which was won by a European, by the way, and I think that's going to be the case in 2024. Not only is there probably going to be more events this year, so more opportunities for people to travel, but there's a lot of people in Europe that I think are very close to hitting a pinnacle. Tarek, Raffalo, Bloom Forever, Siski, those guys are extremely close to the next level. Lutini's already a top 5 player in the world. You have X Factor players like M40 and Quick that can just pop off sometimes. I have very high hopes for Europe this year, and I hope they're able to prove me right. Our next region is going to be America, and America's a really tough one for me to gauge because it's probably the most top-heavy region in the world. You got Tweak, Light, Zomba, Mutes, vods as the top 5. You have players like Shattuck, WebJP, Apollo Kage, Beast Mode Paul, they're all on the rise. But you also have a lot of very good American players that just don't go to a ton of stuff. Cola, Quid, Didi, Mars, Onin, Tilde. If those guys were consistently going to events, I can guarantee you at least one of them is getting into the top 8 pretty much every single time. So it really does just come down to, is America going to have a spectacular year because these guys are traveling a lot? Or is America just going to have a good year? Because it's still a very good region, still the second best region in the game, and I don't think that's going to change. But can they surpass Japan? That's going to be the question. And I'll answer that question for you right now. Our final region is going to be Japan, and the short answer is no. I do not think Japan is going to be surpassed as the best region in Smash Ultimate. Maybe ever in this game. It feels like it's gotten to the point where Japan is just going to be the best forever unless people start traveling there because they just have so many more events. And the region is also extremely compact, so it's much easier for players to play against top-level players, to practice against the best of the best because everyone is so close together. You look at America or, God forbid, Europe, everyone is so spread out. It's really hard to get that super high level practice, whereas in Japan everything is a lot more compact and it's easier to find opponents that are very good at the game, and that's why the average level in Japan is so much higher than every other region, and it's probably going to stay that way. And with that, I thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Now, just because I didn't mention your favorite player doesn't mean I think they're going to fall off in 2024. They're going to have a terrible year. There's just a lot of very good people in this game. And I'm really curious what y'all think. Who do you think is going to pop off this year? What characters do you think are going to shift in and out of the meta? What region do you think is going to explode? Just leave a comment down below. And while you're down there, be sure to sub. And I'll see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.